shocking news from the sports world. Our CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh just confirmed that Steelers Hall of Fame running back Franco Harris has died. Harris was set to have his number 32 jersey retired this Saturday as the Steelers take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Franco Harris was 72 years old.
Oh, wow.
That's a devastating loss.
Oh, he is on the phone. We have him right now. So you have a lot of personal experience with Harris, and we want to know what you want to say about him this morning. You guys are working on a big special for Friday on the Immaculate Reception. What's your reaction, Rich?
First of all, it's sad being woken up to this news. There's such a big night planned for him coming up on Saturday on Christmas Eve at the Steelers, and we have a special planned on Friday night, and we talked to him just recently. I know he was on KDK yesterday, but we did an extensive interview with him, and he was just one of the nicest guys. I played bocce with him a few months ago at the Little Italy days in Bloomfield, and he's the kind of guy that would talk to anyone, and you could go up and shake his hand, and you could talk to him about anything, and he would sit there and listen to you. He was a star. Can you imagine what it was like being him in the 70s and playing football in the 80s here? And, now he's just bigger than life, and he's one of the most recognizable Steelers of all time, and just a great human being. I've interviewed him multiple times, and, he would laugh and joke around. He knew you by your name. He was just a great guy, and this is very, very sad news.
Rich, just the timing of all of this has to be stunning for the sports world in general, right? And especially his number is set to be retired on Saturday in just a matter of days.
Yeah, the timing is it's kind of incredible, which makes this even more sad and devastating news that he was going to be honored. Not too many people get their number retired by the Steelers, and that was going to happen for him on Saturday. They had a big halftime presentation planned, and I'm sure they're still going to go through with it in some way. I don't know. But, I just want to emphasize what a great person he was and what he did for the community. He's always involved in everything. If there was a charity, he was there. He was helping out. He was just a great person. He talked to anyone, did anything for anyone. If you asked him, he was there. He was just a great person.
Rich, thank you so much for sharing memories of Harris, and we want to send our condolences to Harris's friends and family, anyone who loved him. It's very sad.
And I'm sure, Rich, you're going to be following this and gathering more for us. And
pitch the ball to Franco, and he's running wide right, and he goes in for a Pittsburgh touchdown. And Franco Harris has another Super Bowl touchdown. Giving the ball to Franco through the middle, and over the 15 to 10, the 5, touchdown Pittsburgh. They opened it up down the middle, and the big guy went straight ahead through the hole. He knocked them loose in every direction. How about that one? Bradshaw giving it to Harris, getting a key block from Mullins, running to the left, turning the corner, he's in there for a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
down, still 10 to go. Pittsburgh's ball at their own 40-yard line, 22 seconds left to play. He throws deep, and it is batted away. It's batted over the head of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Franco Harris. He's at the 25, the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5, the touchdown for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now we want to turn things over to our Josh Taylor, who has more on the passing of Franco Harris. And Josh, what do you remember most about him?
I have gotten the opportunity professionally to meet Franco Harris, whether as a reporter or as an anchor, and there were always a couple of different things that if you ran into Franco, you knew you'd hear them and you knew you'd hear them with a smile on his face. One, he loved talking about playing at Penn State. He was proud to be a Penn State alumnus. But number two, he loved to tell you anything involving, just merely involving being a Pittsburgh Steeler and being in Pittsburgh. That was the thing he loved discussing the most. It could be any topic. It could be any story. But if you asked him about the Immaculate Reception, his eyes would just completely light up. But it was one of those things where when you grew up in the generation I grew up in, I'm in my early 40s. So you were alive for the latter part of Franco Harris's career, but you weren't alive for the Immaculate Reception. You weren't alive for the lion's share of his career. But you were told by older siblings, you were told by your parents, you were told by your grandparents. Those stories were always passed down, and you'd always see the footage, and it's so iconic to this day. But Franco Harris was one of the people that actually identified you with the Pittsburgh Steelers growing up in that generation. I can remember just even moving away from Pittsburgh for a couple of years. If you were a Pittsburgh expatriate and you even came back to visit, once you got to Pittsburgh International Airport and you were coming down that escalator, one of the first things you saw that reminded you were home was that Franco Harris statue. That was like your confirmation that you were on black and gold soil. And I think that's something that a lot of people identify with, and I saw one of the outlets here had a story about that, just that statue and what it meant to so many different people. But you always do when somebody out of town was in town or somebody who lived in town came back, because they would always post a picture of the Franco statue. It was almost like the rite of passage. Hey, you're back in Pittsburgh, got to show the picture of Franco and the statue at the airport. But that was one of those things, one of those parts of the fabric that was woven into this city that Franco Harris was. And I think that's one of those things that, growing up you always remember. And I think it makes it even harder to digest all this with just the timing of it all, knowing that enough honor in and of itself, because I don't think people realize the Steelers don't retire a lot of jersey numbers. They're very selective in which numbers they retire. So the fact that number 32 is being retired by this organization is just a huge honor in and of itself. But to hear this happen just days before that's supposed to take place is just absolutely heartbreaking. There's no better way to put it. And especially with this organization having so much history tied to that one event, because if people don't really remember, this was the Steelers' first ever playoff victory in their franchise's history, was the Immaculate Reception. So not only did it, kind of open the door for a lot of championship success, it opened the door for just playoff success in general, because they had never gotten that far in the playoff actual picture until that victory in 1972. Then a couple years later, the Super Bowl victory happened, and then 3 more happened after that. And by then, the legacy of Franco Harris was stamped. But there is so much that is tied just to the history of this franchise and also the history of this city that Franco Harris is just completely intertwined with.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that Pittsburgh natives and Pittsburgh residents and Pittsburgh expats will always remember, and they'll always hold that as part of their own personal history.
And that's the one thing, Josh, we really want to emphasize, is just more of the impact that he had here locally, not just as an amazing athlete, but the fact that he was so involved in the community. Josh, thank you so much. We'll get back to you. I imagine more on Franco's history and what the impact he has made here in Pittsburgh and beyond.